Welcome to This Week in Media-ocrity, where we present you with all the best and the worst of the media. I'm your host, Joel Foster, and this would be a great time to start teaching English overseas. I'll explain to you in a minute. Well, this week was another interesting one. The Trump presidency has been through several phases throughout the past 6 months. First, we were greeted to the show me stage, where Trump would gather the press so they could see his pretty pictures while he tried his damnedest to get those brown people out of our country, unless they're Saudi Arabian. Then we moved on to the celebratory phase, where the president acted like the election was still going on, while we all wished that the election had never happened. After that, we had a few months of the Russian phase, where the president suddenly took a new liking to borscht, not smiling at strangers, and the wacky comedy of Yakov Smirnoff. In Soviet Russia, our leaders collude with you. Since then, we've had the coal phase, the voter fraud phase, and of course, how can we forget the healthcare phase, which thankfully he seems to have forgotten about. Now we come to the pinnacle of the Trump campaign promise, as we find ourselves finally in the all-out racist phase. We knew it was coming. Now it's here, and it's just as uncomfortable as we thought it would be. But let's just ride it out, because pretty soon we'll be moving on to Trump's 80s retro phase. Yeah, be fun. All right, it began Wednesday when Trump announced that the Senate would attempt to overhaul the nation's immigration system. The plan involved reducing the amount of immigrants let into the country by 50% over a decade and severely curtailing the number of refugees allowed to stay in the U.S. The green card system would also be overhauled and turned into a merit-based program based on points. Extra points can be earned not only for advanced degrees, but also for those who've received Nobel Peace Prizes and Olympic medals. As if any Nobel winners would want to come here now. So this means that under the law, someone like Albert Einstein, who dropped out of prep school at age 15, wouldn't be allowed, but Olympic winner and murderer Oscar Pistorius would be welcomed with open arms. Makes sense, right? Interestingly, the merit system would also demand that immigrants speak fluent English in order to gain points to enter the country, which is kind of weird considering we have a president that talks like this.
Nuclear. My uncle was a great professor and scientist and engineer, Dr. John Trump at MIT. Good genes, very good genes, okay? Very smart. The Wharton School of Finance, very good, very smart. You know, if you're a conservative Republican, if I were a liberal, if I ran as a liberal Democrat, they would say I'm one of the smartest people anywhere in the world. It's true. But when you're a conservative Republican, they do they do a number? That's why I always started, went to Wharton, was a good student. Went there, did this, built the... You know, I have to give my credentials all the time because we're at a little disadvantage. But you look at the nuclear deal, the thing that really bothers me, it would have been so easy, and it's not as important as these lives are. Nuclear is so powerful. My uncle explained that to me many, many years ago, the power, and that was 35 years ago. He would explain the power of what's going to happen, and he was right. Who would have thought?
Wait, 35 years ago? So your uncle told you about nuclear power in 1982. That's only 4 years before Chernobyl. Who knew the power? Pretty sure everyone's known about the power of nuclear power since Hiroshima, except for Donald Trump, apparently. By the way, that was in response to someone asking him about his tax plan. Got a little distracted, but he's got the best words, so who are we to question what he's talking about? Anyway, the Extreme Immigration 2.0 law was rolled out on Wednesday by advisor Stephen Miller, who took a break from quoting Mein Kampf and poking cat corpses to make an appearance in front of cameras that, shockingly, didn't melt his skin. If you're not familiar with Miller, picture every creepy kid you ever went to high school with, add 2 black marbles for eyes, a dash of David Duke, and cover with a white shower cap. Miller was allegedly the mastermind behind the failed Muslim ban early in Trump's presidency. And by mastermind, I mean the guy that Trump farms his work out to. A guy who never bothered to read the Constitution, probably because it was written in black ink. Here's Miller announcing the plan, then getting into an argument with CNN reporter Jim Acosta about, believe it or not, poetry. And no, it's not There Was a Man from Nantucket. Let's take a look.
I mean, you really don't know that?
Cuban immigrant. He came to this country in 1962, right before the Cuban Missile Crisis, and obtained a green card. Yes, people who immigrate to this country can eventually. People who immigrate to this country not through Ellis Island,
as a factual question,
do obtain a green card at some point. They do it through a lot of hard work. And yes, they may learn English as a second language later on in life. So, but this whole notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
Jim, actually, I have to honestly say, I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment. This is an amazing moment that you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience?
Of course, there are people who come.
But that's not what you said, and it shows your cosmopolitan bias.
The worst part of that whole thing is that I have the same tie. Let's slip this on. Fun fact, this tie protects me from being on the right side of history. You may have seen that clip since it created a firestorm on the internet and cable news, but you probably didn't see what happened after that heated exchange. Let's take a look.
After late tonight.
Well, this is a woman's wig. You're crazier than you look.
I said, put it on.
Hey, I'm not about to.
Do as my warriors say, and put it on. Now. Suits him. He don't look bad.
Yeah, admit it, Stephen Miller looks gorgeous in a wig. You would think this was embarrassing for Stephen Miller, losing his cool at a press conference like that, but on Fox News it was presented as a triumph as they painted Acosta as the clown. Here's Hannity being totally fair and balanced about the argument. Let's take a look.
Has really made great strides in solidifying their position as one of America's premier fake news networks. Now, naturally, one of its top pushers of fake news is none other than the so arrogant, combative, and frankly whiny senior White House correspondent Jim Acosta.
What's with all that whining, huh? I mean, Sean Hannity would never whine about anything, especially not Donald Trump being treated unfairly, right?
There that are sabotaging the current president because they agree with the old president. Don't they need to all go? Didn't Clinton do that when he became president?
Absolutely he did, and they applied every ideological and political partisan litmus test under the sun to do it. Why shouldn't the Trump administration play by the same rules? And in fact,
Oh. So his argument is essentially the one that every teenager makes who gets caught talking in class. Well, Jimmy was talking too, and you didn't yell at him. By the way, he was talking to Michelle Malkin, a conservative pundit who proves that beauty is indeed only skin deep. Under that, it's a pile of burning tires and curdling milk. Is it me, or does Fox News spend most of its time now just trash talking CNN? Fox News has pretty much become the Muhammad Ali of news networks. Or I guess they'd prefer John McEnroe. Do they report news anymore? It seems like their only news item is talking about how bad CNN is. We get it. There's other things going on in the world, like the calf that looks like Gene Simmons, for example. And the CNN body slams didn't stop there. Here's Tucker Carlson talking with Mark Stein about the Jim Costa argument. Let's see what he has to say.
Author and columnist Mark Stein. Did you see this exchange today, Mark?
Yes, I did. And first of all, I don't understand why Jim Acosta is allowed to hijack a White House press conference for this kind of showboating. One of the reasons why we need immigrants to come here and do the jobs that Americans won't do is because apparently one of the jobs that Americans won't do is drag Jim Acosta out of there, kick him to the sidewalk and say, if you want to do the Jim Acosta show, there's a rusting boxcar around the back of the freight yards with 3 semi-comatose hobos who are interested in it, but nobody else here is. And that would have been the healthy reaction to that.
That was the most confusing metaphor I've ever heard. What was even the joke there? And why does it always seem like Tucker's being tickled from behind his chair? Always with that giggle. But the idea of a journalist being beat to death is pretty funny, right? And that guy he was talking to, Mark Stein, well, he's got more material than his immigrant boxcar bit. Here he is participating on a panel discussing multiculturalism. Take a guess as to what side he's on. Let's find out.
But to address multiculturalism more broadly, I mean, what I find fascinating is you take traditionalisms, fascism, Nazism, communism. They are almost by definition isms designed to provoke an argument. Some guy comes up and says, I'm a fascist. And you say, oh yeah, well, I'm a communist. They're designed to be oppositional. Multiculturalism is the slipperiest ism because it doesn't invite an argument. It says there's no point to having an argument.
Not as funny, but makes just as little sense. Maybe he needs to throw in a boxcar in there and it'll sell his point a little better. So he's saying that we shouldn't have multiculturalism because it assumes that everyone is the same, so we won't be able to have disagreements over who's better. It's been a while since I heard someone argue against peace, but there you have it. Speaking of racist arguments, we're going to learn a new German word today, going all the way back to Nazi Germany. See, I'm not only a hacky pundit, I'm also a teacher. The word is Lügenpresse. Say it with me, Lügenpresse. It's a word that was used by the Hitler regime, meaning lying press. The Nazis didn't invent the term, as it was used by Karl Marx in the 1850s against the press, who opposed communism. It's just like the Nazis took their symbol from the Japanese Buddhists, who call it the manji. The manji represents harmonious interplay between opposing forces. The Nazis took the symbol, twisted it around, and Nazi symbol. And irony. The Nazis were basically the 1940s of P. Diddy. They take old things and make them worse. But the word Lügenpresse had a bit of resurgence lately, much like phrases like hella, good to go, or measles outbreak. The alt-right resurrected the term to stand for their fight against the media and don't seem to realize that taking inspiration from the Nazis isn't the best look. Here's a quick look at how the Lügenpresse is catching on with the Trump folk.
That's what you are! Lügenpresse! Lügenpresse! You said it right. That's right. We're done. You're all in bed with the twins. You're all bought, paid for. Every one of you. Look at weekend. Not all of them. Down constantly. Yeah, there's a good one. Most of them are nice. They're nice people.
I want it that way. All right, one example of someone fighting the good fight is Ezra Levant of Rebel Media, seen here doing his famous impression of a largemouth bass. Rebel Media might sound familiar if you saw 2 episodes ago when we looked at Jack Posobiec, the boy wonder of the alt-right. If you don't remember, it's the guy that was yelling during the Julius Caesar show and saying, Goebbels, Goebbels! Take a look if you forget. He's a charming fella. So Ezra Levant is one of the most popular figures of Rebel Media, which Jack Posobiec was also a part of. Here's Levant defending the use of Lügenpresse with some good Lügenpresse of his own.
Beide müssen sich einander ergänzen. Und wenn die jüdischen Zeitungen heute glauben, auf versteckte Drohungen durch die nationalsozialistische Bewegung einschüchtern zu können, wenn sie heute glauben, unsere Notverordnungen umgehen zu dürfen, sie sollen sich hüten. Einmal wird unsere Geduld zu Ende sein und dann wird den Juden das freche Lügenmaul gestopft werden.
Oh, I'm sorry, that was the wrong video. I really need to label my personal archive. Here's the real Ezra Levant, who's in color, but not that much color.
I agree with him, but don't you dare criticize the media en masse or you're a Nazi. Nazi. Yeah. They say that word a lot, don't they? The anti-Trump extremists calling Trump a Nazi and obviously anyone else who supports him a Nazi. Yeah, about that. See, the word Lügenpresse, according to the German newspaper Der Spiegel, that word goes back centuries. It goes back, for example, to the time of Karl Marx, more than 150 years ago, when communists, with Karl Marx, called the media the Lügenpresse, for what they say was lying about Karl Marx and the working class and communists. So they were saying the Lügenpresse in the 1840s.
You said...
Slam! I'm sorry, but he's right. What's wrong with someone taking a former ideology and reappropriating it for another time period? Oh yeah. Well, maybe Fox News doesn't mean to do this, but by dumping on the media like they've been doing, which they're a part of the media, by the way, they're enabling figures like Ezra Levant to become people's primary source of information. And then you've got even worse figures like Richard Spencer, champion of the alt-right and Brill Cream spokesman. I'm sure you're well aware of Spencer by this point, but if not, or even if you are, just sit back, relax, and watch him get embarrassed by a little geography lesson. Let's take a look.
Hold up, you said, okay, first of all...
That is absolutely true,
First of all, the greatest genius when it came to the building of the pyramids, do you know what
Those are white people, by the way.
Who are white people?
The Egyptians are not African. I'm sorry.
Do you know where Egypt is?
Yes, it's in North Africa.
Okay, stop. Stop right there. You just said that you said the Egyptians are not African.
Are white South Africans African?
Wait. Yes, they are African. See, okay, to be African means you come from the continent of Africa. So if you come from the continent of Africa, that's who you are. So that means you're an African. So you do know, do you also deny science that man originated from Africa, or do you say that's false science?
What are you talking about? I mean, what are you referring to?
I'm talking
science.
Archaeology. I'm talking biology. I'm talking science. In terms of the where did man originate? Scientists, white scientists.
Egypt was an amazing civilization.
No,
it was not created by black Africans. I'm sorry.
It wasn't? Who created it?
People who are white.
See, you don't have to punch Nazis. You just have to let them talk. The only thing worse than the garbage coming out of his mouth is that he pronounces it white. I'm all for free speech, but if I were president, you better believe it would be illegal to pronounce that H. Of course, the host had a good argument, but it's worth mentioning that Richard Spencer would just as likely lost that argument to a cat, because nothing rebuts the claims of ethnic superiority quite like the word meow. Try it next time you get into an argument. It'll disarm anybody. But back to Stephen Miller. I've wasted enough of your time, so I don't have time to tackle all the inaccuracies of what Stephen Miller, the Trump administration, and anyone who supports the new immigration plan is saying, so I'll just stick with one major point. Miller says that immigrants who come to the U.S. compete with American workers, which is why they have to stop them from coming. First off, isn't competition like the major platform of conservative Republicans? They talk about the free market, how it can only survive with competition, or else it descends into corruption and cronyism. Like, listen to Greg Gutfeld, Fox News' resident stoner uncle, explain why he likes the immigration plan.
But I think in terms of the actual specifics of what they're introducing, what is wrong with having people learn a language? How dare you demand something that helps them? You're actually saying, we want you to do well. In a strange way, we are asking immigrants to compete amongst themselves. It's like we're actually inviting competition and wanting you to come over here and kick our butts.
Okay, so then why is it a bad thing to have immigrants come here and compete against Americans, even low-skilled immigrants with no education? Immigrants have done well in our country because they're competing against the native-born, which in turn ideally drives the native-born to need to try harder. It's not their fault that we haven't tried harder. It's not their fault that we like to spend our time posting food on Instagram, then putting a dog filter on Snapchat. The whole argument reminds me of a scene from Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, where there's three guys talking about a Korean shop owner across the street. Let's give it a look.
Look at those Korean motherfuckers across the street. I bet you they haven't been off the boat a year before they open up their own place. That's right, man. It's been about a year. A year off the mother boat, and they already got a business in our neighborhood, a good business, occupying a building that had been boarded up for longer than I care to remember. And I've been here a long time. Man, you've been here a long time. Yeah, boy. And now, for the life of me, I can't figure this out. Either them Korean mother are geniuses, or you black asses are just plain dumb. It's got to be because we are black. Ain't no other explanation. No, I ain't talking that old keep. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. You ain't going to do a goddamn thing. You know, but sit y'all monkey ass on this corner. Hey, Emil, when you gonna get your business? Huh? Yeah, just like I thought. You ain't gonna do a goddamn thing. But I tell you what I'm gonna do. You know what I mean? I'm gonna go over there and get them Koreans some more of my money.
Appreciate all the sound editing that went into that. So if we're to understand this law, then it should be harder for someone like that Korean shop owner to come over here because he doesn't have a PhD and doesn't speak fluent English. Are we to think that a guy like that doesn't belong in our country, but this guy does?
When you call any place, even a small place, there's a question about a number of which one we press, which one to push the press for when we speak English. The sad thing about it is that English is not even one no more. English is number 2 or 3 or 4. First, Spanish, 1, and then press 2 for English. This is this country. No other country enables this crap.
Thanks, Professor. He ended his lecture with a treatise on the lucid wordplay of Proust and Wittgenstein. In his defense, when he held up one finger, he actually saw 2, so that might have derailed him a little bit. If we're deciding to take skilled immigrants into our country, can we get rid of guys like him? Because if we're going to do the moral absolute thing, let's go hard or go home. This is America, after all, the land of the free and the home of the brave, as long as we don't have foreigners competing with us. Okay, that's about all the time I've got. Treat everyone good, because as Chris Rock said,
See, it don't make no sense to hate nobody. It don't make no sense being racist or sexist or nothing. But whoever, it don't. It don't make no sense. But whoever you hate will end up in your family. That's right. You don't like gays, you're gonna have a gay son. You don't like Puerto Ricans, your daughter's gonna come home and live in la vida loca.
all right, guys, I'll see you next week. Have a great weekend. Stay cool. Next time, we'll talk about whatever. All right, see you next week.